A lot of countries are actually cutting their interest rate now. Countries like the United States of America, China, Canada, and other European countries are actually cutting their interest rate now. But unfortunately, in Nigeria, we are not cutting our interest rates. Nigeria's interest rate still stands at 24 point something percent. And what does that imply is that as an average man on the street, you cannot have access to credit facilities. And if at all you are going to have access to a credit facilities, the amount of money that will be offered to you will be in the barest minimum or the lowest minimum. And in such an economic situation, you might not likely go very far in terms of what of creating financial opportunities for yourself. So it is not actually helping, because over the years or since the inception of this administration, the government has actually not cut interest rate to the barest minimum. And unfortunately also, while other countries are actually being dynamic with the interest rate and cutting it at one particular time or the other, in our own developing countries or developing economy in Nigeria, we are not actually cutting our interest rates. Last week, the federal government actually presented a budget of 49.7 million trillion naira to the National Assembly, and that budget actually have a deficit of 9.2 trillion naira. In other words, it means that the government is going to spend some money, and they are going to spend the money that they don't have. And what does that imply? Spending the money that they don't have. It means that the government is actually going to borrow money to actually fund the deficit budget. Now, what does that imply in Nigeria's economy? It implies that the inflation fight is actually not over yet, and there's still much more to be done in this economic situation or conditions that we actually find ourselves. So, a lot of people actually hate inflation. A lot of people have actually hate inflation because in a period of inflation, the cost of goods and services is always very, very high. It's always very expensive. It's always unbearable for an average man on the street, because he may not be able to fund such a economic economic crisis that the country is actually experiencing. So in this economic situation, it is not a good one for a lot of people, and because not a good one for a lot of people, and the consumer, price index or consumer, behavior and their consumption in this period of time is not very good enough, because on the other hand too, a lot of companies are going to fold up, they are going to lose money and the rest of them. So companies are actually devising, smart ways to actually make money, because they cannot actually increase the price of the goods, because if they do, people might not be able to afford them, and when they cannot be able to afford them, the company will experience a loss. So because of that, they have to be smart, and by being smart, it means that they have to reduce the quantity of the product they are actually producing. So they are left with three options in this situation. They are left with either to continue with the inflationary trend, or to go for what we call shrinkflation, or to go for what we call skimflation, or to they have to choose out of the three. Is either they encourage inflation by increasing the price of goods and services which people not buy, or go for what we call shrinkflation, reducing the quantity of the goods they are producing, or going for the third option, which is what we call skimflation, that is reducing the quality of what they are producing but still retaining the quantity. So if you are very conversant with the Nigerian economic system, you have been buying in this economic system, you will know that what I'm saying is actually very, very right. So what is actually shrinkflation? What is actually skimflation? And then after that, we go to what we call stagflation and the effect on the economy and the role of what? Of being a smart investor in the Nigeria's economy. So I will start what we call shrinkflation. Now, shrinkflation is a situation, a condition where companies actually reduce the quantity of the product they are actually producing. Do you get it now? So it is a situation whereby companies actually reduce the quantity of the product they are actually producing to the society. Why do they have to reduce the price? The quantity. They have to reduce the quantity because if they increase the quantity, the price of the product, people will not buy it. They will not buy it. So they have to reduce the quantity and still retain the same price for them to be able to sell their product to members of the public. So when you have a situation like this, you call it a shrinkflation. Then let's go to the second one, which is what we call skimflation. Skimflation. Now, skimflation occurs where companies actually reduce the quality of their products. They reduce the quality of their products without necessarily reducing the quantity. So when you have this situation, you call it skimflation. So it's actually a method used by productive companies to actually reduce the quality of the product without actually reducing the quantity. So the quality will not be there, but the quantity will be there. So in other words, those products or materials that are actually using to produce that product will be reduced, or they have to look for a product that have a similar but lower value to replace that value of a product that have an higher value, just to make a profit. Because another thing is that because if they increase the price, consumer will not buy it in this inflationary trend in Nigeria, and that's why they will reduce the quality and not the quantity. For example, maybe they have been using cocoa before, they can go for palm oil. Do you get it now? So that means that they have actually reduced the quality, but not reducing the quantity. So I've mentioned the effect of what? Of inflation here. That is, when there is inflation, there is increase in the prices of goods and their services. And if companies increases the prices of their goods and services, people will not buy. So for that reason, they must look for a way to make profit or to break even. And one of them is to encourage what we call shrinkflation, which is a situation where they will reduce the quantity of the product, but we still retain the price. Then they can go for what we call skimflation, where they will reduce the quality and not the quantity, just to retain the price and make more profit. Do you get it now? So companies are actually devising this medium or this process just to survive in the economic system. Because if they don't do that, there's every possibility that most of these companies are going to fold up. Now, in a period of inflation, it is always difficult to track skimflation, or to track a shrinkflation, because they do not reflect in inflation numbers, and that's why they're always very difficult to track in a period of inflation. Whether it is inflation, whether it is shrinkflation or skimflation, they are all the consequences of what? Of government spending the money that they do not have. Now, if you could remember, when I started this analysis, I said the government of this country actually presented a budget to the National Assembly, a joint National Assembly of the House of Representatives and the Senate, House of Senate. And in that budget, they actually, presented a deficit budget of 9.2 trillion naira. Now, the question is, what is actually a deficit budget? When you see that the government is experiencing or have a deficit budget, it means that the government is going to look for a medium to fund the remaining part of the budget. And when they are actually looking for a medium to fund the many aspects of the government, it means that the government is going to borrow money. So inflation, shrinkflation, skimflation, they are all the consequences of the government spending the money that they do not have. Do you get it now? Because in most cases, in most advanced countries too, government actually spend money too that they do not have. And why do they spend this money? They spend this money because they need to stimulate the economy. And when they're actually stimulating this economy, they actually bring down the interest rate. And that's why in most developing countries, they are not getting it right. When government is spending more money to the public, you need to increase the interest rate to stimulate growth. Because when the interest rate is actually reduced to various minimum, money will go into the hands of every individual, and they can be able to create surplus in society by creating more employment opportunities and stimulating the economy. And that is where the government of this country is not getting it right. You are experiencing or having a deficit budget, pumping money into the economy, but not reducing the interest rate. Because in a situation like this, for you to be able to get out of the economic quagmire, the interest rate needed to be reduced to the barest minimum to stimulate economic growth. Because when people have access to loan, they can be able to create more employment opportunities, and they can be able to stimulate the economy. So the inflation fight is not yet over in this country. Do you understand? A situation where the inflation stands at 34.something% is not a good one for the economy, and the government is not even reducing the interest rate, which stands at 24.something%. Is not also a good one for the economy. So when the government is having a deficit budget, It means that the government needs to reduce the interest rate to stimulate economic system in the what? In the economy, so that they can create job and create what? A good standard of living for an average man on the street. So the government needs to look into this area. If inflation does not go down and job market is performing poorly, then there's going to be a big problem. And that big problem is that it's going to create what we call stagflation. So when inflation does not go down, like what we're experiencing in Nigeria now, and there is no corresponding creation of employment opportunities or job creation for the average man on the street, then we are moving to what we call stagflation, which brings me to the third one, which is what we call stagflation. Now, what is stagflation? In a very nutshell, in a very straight way, stagflation is when there is a rise in unemployment. So you experience stagflation when there is a rise in unemployment. Then you experience stagflation when there is a rise in inflation. Then you also experience stagflation when there is a slow pace of the economy. So high unemployment, high inflation rates, and slow pace of the economy will lead to what we call stagflation. So the question is, are we really moving to stagflation in Nigeria, or there's a way out? Of course, there's always a way out, and the way out to this economic crisis is that the government needs to reduce the interest rate so that it can be able to stimulate the economy and people can be able to afford the basic needs and services. And there are some other methods which the government can actually do that can be able to correct this high level of inflation, which I'm not going to discuss in this topic, like import substitution strategy and some other factors that the government can actually use to address this high level of inflation in the country. So if inflation is not tamed and there is no corresponding employment opportunities for the people, then we are moving into what we call stagflation, which is high unemployment rate, high cost of living, which is inflation, and the slow pace of the economy. Now, whether the economy is experiencing stagflation or shrinkflation or skinflation or stagflation, there is always a way out, and that way out is that you are actually a smart investor. So if you are actually a smart investor in this economic system, you have nothing to worry about. And how can you be a smart investor? Being a smart investor is that you are actually investing your money wisely, because in economic crisis will always create economic opportunities that for those that have financial education. So how can you be a smart investor? You can be a smart investor by setting money aside for a period of emergency and to buy or key into these investment opportunities. That is, you can actually buy more in a period of economic crisis. Because why? A lot of stock prices are actually crashing and people are selling their stocks. So at that point in time, you can buy your stock at a discounted rate, maybe 50% discount rate or 30% discount rate or 75% discounted rate. And the beauty of it is that at the end of the day, the economy is going to bounce back. So by the time the economy bounces back, the rate or the cost of this value of this product or these stocks is going to increase again. And when it increases again, what are you doing? You are making more profit at the end of the day. So as an investor, as a smart investor, you need to set money aside for emergency, and you need to set money aside or a cash aside for buying of stocks, or buying of investment portfolios. Another thing that can make you actually to be a smart investor is that you need to have what we call financial education. Financial education is very important in this capitalist economy or a free market economy system that we are operating in Nigeria and other parts of the world. Because in a free market economy system, if you don't have financial education, you might not be able to know where you can actually invest your money and make more money for yourself. Because what may make you to have more profit or to make more money in this economic crisis is when you have financial education. And how do you obtain financial education? Is by reading a lot of books, by reading a lot of books, watching videos online on YouTube and the rest of them. Then number 3 is that you need to pay attention to financial trends to know where the tides are actually going. Because we are in an ever dynamic economic system where things are changing on a regular basis. So you need to have, financial education to be able to know the financial trends of where the tides are actually going, where you can actually invest your money, where you can actually withdraw your money, and where you can actually win in the economic system. Like I said, economic crisis will create economic opportunities. When there are economic crises like we are experiencing in our world now, where there's inflation, there's shrinkflation, there's inflation, there's stagflation, and the rest of them, if you have financial education, you can be able to invest your money smartly and make more money for yourself. Smart investors don't worry, they don't panic, they're not, scared of the present economic situation because it will create financial opportunities for them. So if you have financial education, you will know that this economic crisis, stagflation, skinflation, shrinkflation, inflation, and the rest of them are meant to create what we call financial opportunities, where you can make more money and become a billionaire or a millionaire. It's not actually late now. You can still make effort, you can still make or achieve something for yourself at the end of the day if you have this high level of financial education. And that's why I always tell a lot of people that economic crisis, economic problem, economic stagnation, economic inflation, economic skinflation, economic shrinkflation, economic stagflation, economic inflation, economic ulubalus, economic instabilities will always create financial opportunities. That is, if you have high level of financial education. That's why financial education is very important. You need to watch more videos on YouTube like this video. You need to read a lot of books on what, on investment and what, on personal development. You need to attend symposium and the rest of them. And don't forget, you need to change your mindset, because becoming a millionaire or becoming a billionaire start with a positive mindset. You imagine yourself becoming a billionaire before you can now transfer it or make it a reality at the end of the day. So on this point, I'm going to stop on this video. If you have actually gained something in this video, please subscribe now. I've mentioned a lot of analysis in this video now I've just done. I've mentioned inflation, I've talked about shrinkflation, inflation, I've talked about stagflation and the rest of them. And I believe that you've actually been able to gain a lot of things now. That if at all anybody asks you now today, that what is actually inflation, you know that there's a high cost of living without a corresponding value in the value of money. That is, in the period of inflation, money actually loses value. Then, if there's somebody asks you what is shrinkflation, is a situation where companies actually devise a means where they reduce quantity of the goods without necessarily increasing the price of the goods. Then somebody asks you what is actually, skinflation. It is where they actually reduce the quality of the product without necessarily reducing the quantity of the product. Then if somebody asks you what is actually stagflation, it is actually what we call increase in unemployment, increase in inflation, and slow pace of the economy. So if I've actually gained something in this video, subscribe now. So until I meet you next time, thank you all and God bless you. Bye-bye.